You're listening to CinePunked. This episode, Gremlins. Joe Dante's 1984 smash Gremlins was originally released in the US as a summer blockbuster, but its festive setting and satirical take on consumerism has ensured it a longevity in the pantheon of Christmas classics. Rich in black humour and a pile of instantly merchandisable critters in both the Mogwai and titular Gremlins, it could easily be mistaken for a kids' film at first glance, but Gremlins is something bolder, darker, with a cynicism that welcomes adult audiences. Billy's errant inventor Fowler brings back an unusual creature picked up in a Chinatown shop in New York as a Christmas present with a set of simple instructions. Avoid bright light, keep the creature away from water, and never feed him after midnight. When the rules are broken, chaos ensues in the sleepy town of Kingston Falls. I'm your host, Robert J.E. Simpson, and joining me on our traditional festive outing is my friend and colleague, Neil Sedgewick.
Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins. They're clever. They're mischievous. They'll get into the kitchen, the basement, the garage. They'll get into anything. And once they get in, there's a real gremlin in my car! You're in for it. Gremlins. They'll be expecting you at a special sneak preview Saturday, May 19th. Directed by Joe Dante. Rated PG.
Okay, so this is our traditional Christmas offering, and we are absent some of the other members of the crew, but that's fine. Neil, you and I are going to go alone again, and this time we're going for Gremlins, which was my choice. I've wanted to do this, I think, probably ever since we started doing CinePunked. I wanted to kind of touch base with this one because it is one of those films that I have a lot of affection for. This was a film that, whilst I was too young to see it in the cinemas back in 1984, seeing as I was 3, it was one of those ones that I caught later on TV, and I remember it being recorded in the house onto a VHS at one point, and I think it's a film that I have gained better appreciation for as an adult than I did when I first encountered it. And I wish, I was talking the other night about this when we were watching the first one. It's like, I wish I could remember my first experiences of it. I wish I could remember my first kind of feelings seeing it, and I can't. But it is nonetheless there. And it's one I'm very, very fond of. So our plan, listeners, viewers, if we ever do a video version of this, is to talk on this podcast about Gremlins. And then we've decided, at Neil's request, that we'll also cover Gremlins 2, but we'll try and do that in a second half of the podcast, so a second episode. So if you enjoy the films, look, hopefully you'll get something out of it. I don't think these are going to be massively fact-oriented. It's not that we're dipping into the history of these two films, because I think they're well and truly covered elsewhere. This is more of a kind of, I suppose, more from our feelings and our impressions and that other side of what we do at CinePunked. That fair to say?
Yeah, we're in this one for the love, I think. But I'm with you very much in kind of, I don't really remember my first encounter of it. I can't remember at what age I actually saw it. Like yourself, I was 4.
Yeah.
Around the time it came out, and so that's not going to be in the rotation. But then in later years, it's one of those films that, and particularly this time of year, is just ITV clickbait, UTV clickbait as we have it here. Like it is on, and it's on several times. You'll find it on ITV2 at like 11 o'clock at night. You'll find it on ITV4 at like 9. So like it's dotted around the Christmas schedule when they have a gap. And there's something about this time of year and that programming of these repeated Christmas films that just have a bit of nostalgia and a bit of warmth to them, and a bit of just, I really enjoy this. Let's just talk about how much we enjoy it.
That's fair. I suppose the first question is this a Christmas film?
Yes, it's a Christmas. Don't you start. Don't.
Well, this is something that there is this debate about this every single time you mention a Christmas film. And I think that one's choices for what qualifies as a Christmas film vary widely. The fact that the first film isn't set entirely at Christmas makes it a Christmas film, even though this was a summer release in the United States in 1984. This came out in the middle of summer, which says a lot about the storytelling of it. Like, it doesn't matter what time of year it's set at. The film still works, and it's one of those ones that you can enjoy whenever. I think also, you've already said this, but it's one of those ones that's on ITV rotation. It's a film that comes up, and it's often a seasonal film as well. And I think there's a point at which those films that you encounter, like for me, there's a bunch of films that are part of my Christmas canon that aren't necessarily Christmas films, because I first encountered them during the holiday period. And so that kind of, I think this one ticks a lot of boxes in terms of that. But I just wanted to be clear about our criteria for including this as this year's Christmas film. It's because it's set at Christmas.
100%. This is a Christmas film. I have a similar thing. I like to watch Empire Strikes Back every Christmas time.
It's got snow in it.
It's got snow in it. But the reason for that is it was, again, on ITV, on heavy rotation, and for some reason, at Christmas.
Yeah.
So I've heard similar stories from people about Superman. Superman's another big one that people love to watch at Christmas because, again, it's just in there. It's just in there. Mary Poppins, there's another one. Like those types of things that aren't. But this is an absolute Christmas film because it is set at Christmas. We've got the decorations. We've got the snow. You can't argue with.
I mean, I do think it goes a bit further than that too, though, because it is that central premise about the gift giving is what is really here. I mean, you've got a couple of different things, like Billy's given Gizmo as a Christmas present. He's the substitute puppy, much to the puppy's chagrin, as it sort of looks like being replaced. Yeah. But there's also something about his dad. Billy's dad is sort of sitting there creating things. It feels like the kind of knick-knacky crud that you get given as an afterthought in a Christmas stocking. Like a multi-tool thing that you have no desire or need for, but someone has given it to you because it cost $5 in British home stores back in the day, and they shoved it in your stocking, and that's what you've now got to deal with, and it will sit in the corner of your room, lurking. You can never quite throw it away, but you never want to use it.
Hey, Dad? Listen, I really think there's something I should tell
Billy,
you.
look at this. Now, you're familiar with the bathroom buddy, right?
Uh-huh.
I have made an improvement. Watch this. Now, let's say you're late for the big meeting. It's really important. You're on your way in. You reach up. Oh, you forgot to shave. Now, what are you going to do? Under normal circumstances, you are in trouble. But not if you have the bathroom buddy. Right? Watch this. Voila. What do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty neat. What's this button over
No, don't
for?
push that.
Sorry, Dad.
No, it's okay.
Oh, no, I'm really sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I'm working on it. I haven't finished.
I actually find his dad quite interesting when I watched it this time. I don't know what made him stand out, but because he doesn't actually say an awful lot. I mean, there's a particular, like, he brings the gift and then he's just off at this convention on the phone going, is everything okay? And, kind of checking in with the good missus and all this here type of stuff. And then he appears at the end as like a part of a rescue mission, but he doesn't say a word. It's kind of very strange, his character, and yet at the same time it's kind of central to it because yes, he provides the gift, but also he is an inventor who makes things in the house that are actually, in the kind of technological sense, full of gremlins and glitches and don't work properly. And Billy is scared of like trying to make an orange juice in the morning and things like that, And I kind of really, I looked at it this year and I went, oh, the gremlins are always in your house. They've always been there, but now you get this little creature to bring gremlins in a different form.
That's fair. His dad. I mean, I love the scene in the convention center.
I knew you'd wait.
I mean, that's me nerding out because of the little stuff that's going on in the background. Which again, the older I've got, the more I get the kind of the citations, the cultural references within this film. When I first saw this, I probably hadn't indulged in lots of the stuff there. But, you know, there's a bit where there's you got Robbie the Robot from Lost in Space wandering around, kind of being quite obvious.
Pardon me, sir. Stuff? Thick and heavy? Would 60 gallons be sufficient? I rarely use it myself, sir. It promotes rust.
Then I think my favorite thing is in the background on the right hand side, you've got this weird sort of sitting down machine thing going on, and it's the machine from the Time Machine by the H.G. Wells film. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's not there, and you're like, it's not there because it's a time machine. It's working. I just love that nerd in me. Yeah, still in my 40s. Loves that little bit of kind of play that's going on and this referencing to other stuff, which Joe Dante does a lot in his films. There's quite a lot of kind of other bits and pieces. We just did just a slight momentary tangent. We did a Never Seen It Film Club podcast on The Burbs very recently, which is also available to listeners. And in that, they've got the Klopex, is the kind of the sinister family next door. And I was watching this, and there's a reference. The cat, I think it is, in the old lady's house is Klopek. And
it's right, yes.
And it just stuck out this time in a way that I don't think that has before. I think because I've seen the two films in fairly close proximity. You're like, that's an unusual name. And then I'm suddenly on, are these both Joe Dante films? Why do I don't, it's...
He's leaving wee breadcrumbs and wee Easter eggs everywhere.
Yeah, which I think is quite glorious. I mean, but I don't know. Did you ever see his TV series, Erie, Indiana?
I did. It was on Channel 4 at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't, very kind of like Twilight Zone-esque.
Yeah.
Some kind of longish haired, emo-y looking Kurt Cobain kid running around with kind of gribblies and all weirdness going on. Mm-hmm. I don't. That's basically my entire memory of it. I do remember seeing it at the time, but yeah, I didn't realize that was him.
Mm-hmm, that's him as well. And I think one of the things that Joe does very well actually is sort of capture stuff that attracts a sense of childlikeness. Child. I don't want to say childishness because it's not childish, but it's childlike. There is something about that wonder of all the things that you're discovering, and there's something about Billy's dad that's quite childlike in his enthusiasm and his inability to kind of bring it through completely accurately. And then you've got Billy, who is very clearly a child. He's barely out of his adolescence. And again, that sort of childish wonder that goes on, and even the Gremlins themselves are very infantile. Yeah, very infantile, very they start off very cute and toddler-like, and then they kind of become leery teenage kind of chaos bringers, like just a bunch of teenage lads. That's all it is.
Proper care and feeding of a teenager. Number one rule: don't let them drink alcohol. Rule number two: never let them get into a car with a driver who has been drinking. Rule number three: never, ever, under any circumstances, allow him to take illegal drugs. To grow up a happy, healthy teenager is important. If you love them, you take good care of them.
On that note about gift giving and the effects of Gremlins, I mean, I do think it does seem to be a commentary on sort of presents at Christmas and not thinking through the consequences, particularly in terms of animals. I don't know if that's reading too much into it or not. Any feelings on the gift element of Gremlins?
Yeah, there is something in there about like the cost and the kind of, like you say, how to give somebody something, and then in this case give them responsibility with it, and the problems that can bring, I suppose. But I think for me the thing was just one of the, I think I scribbled something years ago about Gremlins, and like Christmas is a period of chaos. In with all the gift giving and all the, there's a conversation between Billy and Kate about like, don't you just love it? Don't you just love this time of year? And she's like, no, not really. And I think there is a side to Christmas that Gremlins looks at that a lot of Christmas films don't, in that there is a chaotic side to it. Everybody's rushing around. Towns are just madness. Like, you have to get the thing to give to somebody. You have to get the tree. You have to get the decorations up. You're supposed to be in this state of euphoric festivities, and for a lot of people, that's not how it goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I think there is something about that kind of giving of gifts and giving of animals in with there, I think. But there's definitely a bit more going on than just kind of wee ghoulish adventures.
Oh yeah, it's far, far more than that. I mean, the ghouls are the ghoulishness of the Gremlins is fantastic, and it works very well. And I think watching it again this week, I'm struck by how effective the practical effects are in this. Like I'm utterly convinced in this film, whenever they're on screen at any point, I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, it's just a rubber doll." Oh, it's like it feels like they feel like tangible and something that I could engage with. And I think there's almost like a Muppet effect with this. It's very easy to see these creatures sitting alongside Jim Henson's creatures as things that act independently. I'm always, anytime you listen to people talking about working with the Muppet Show, even though they had all their operators, they're always looking at the Muppets themselves and not the operators. And I think there's something that feels like that about this, which makes the whole premise a lot more believable. There's
some very clever shots of, they'll cut away to the Gremlins or back to Billy or something like that, and it's very well put together so that it does have a certain level of reality to it, if you know what I mean by that. Like it doesn't feel like if for example they were to remake it or do something now with it, you can imagine there would be a lot more CGI, and you'd end up with something like like a Paddington. Do you know, like Paddington meets the Gremlins? But you'd end up with that type of film where like Paddington's great, but also very clearly not there. And I think there's something almost tangible and physical about them. It's done really well. There are a couple of shots that there's a shot where like there's a horde of them just walking down the street that looks very Harryhausen. At one point, just they're coming out of the darkness down the town type of thing, and it does look at probably out of it all in the first. That's kind of the one that stands out where you go, that hasn't aged as well, But then I love a Harryhausen, so I'm not going to poo-poo it too much.
I mean, is it just something about our generation grew up on this stuff, and so we have a bit more tolerance for it, perhaps? Whereas, a generation later, 10 years later, it's enough that people had the experience of different kinds of films, and the CGI effects were starting to come in, and expectations are somewhat different. I don't know. I haven't watched this with young people, so I don't know what their vibe is off it in terms of how it looks.
It's not one that's when I say it's on at Christmas in the house, it's generally me on my own sitting down to watch it. It's not one that our girls have sat down to. You know, it's not an Elf. It's not Home Alone. It's not. It's not one of those. It's generally me.
I mean, you've also said something about it's about its darkness, which I think is fair. It isn't a happy film. Whilst there's a lot of joy and kind of lovely mania in it, I don't think you can say that it's a happy narrative.
No, it's got a very, in some ways, a strange tone. It walks a very fine line between that kind of darker side and a very light side, because you've got that kind of Gremlins score, that kind of, I'm not going to sing, don't panic, but like, you know, it's kind of jaunty and it's cartoonish, but it's also like kind of sinister and a wee bit creepy. And then you've got like, you know, you've got this darkness of kind of, you know, there's a lot of slapsticky bits with the Gremlins, which are a lot of fun. And then, like, you know, Billy's mum puts one in the microwave and puts one in like a blender type thing, and it all gets a bit grim and gross, and like she's ready to stab one. Like she's for like Halloween, like
it is. I mean, I think that's the point watching it where you suddenly go, "Oh my gosh, this is really dark," because they're clearly of. I don't think they kill anyone in this film, but I know the intention was originally to kill Billy's mum. And it feels like they're going to come quite close to it, and her reaction is almost like Charles Bronson in Death Wish. It's a massacring back of you know, and countering what it is that they're doing, and she's very violent and very aggressive, and there's no restraint. It feels like I mean, there's a point where I think for me it feels like a slasher movie.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the tropes feel very samey. A lot of the kind of what's going on, it's just that what we've got is you know, it's the Gremlins rather. And I think the only reason you don't take it as a viewer, go down that path, is because we've got the Mogwais, and it's very hard to see this as an ultimately dark film when you've got Gizmo being so adorable the whole way through.
I'm not sure there's anything in cinema like of that period, let's say, cuter than that Gizmo.
He is adorable.
I am sure that if you got say you got a puppy or a kitten or a hamster or a guinea pig around that time, I'm sure there was a lot of Gizmos running about at that point.
I do recall some friends having Gizmos when I was younger, so you know,
various species and breeds. Yeah.
Before we started recording, you were talking to me a little bit about Kate's darkness.
Yeah, Kate. Yeah. But this is what I mean about the tone. Kate, out of nowhere, like, all the lighting changes. There's like almost like a spotlight on her or onto her, and she starts to tell this really dark story about why she doesn't like Christmas. You know, her dad was found. They thought her dad had left, and then there was a smell in the house, and they basically found him in the chimney, dressed as Santa, because he tried to go up on the roof and come down. And it's just like this real like moment of, oh, okay, what do we? what does anybody in the room do with this, including us? And then they're kind of like, oh wow, okay. And then like something appears and they have to deal with it. But it's again, it taps into that thing of not everybody's Christmas has the picture perfect Instagram square, you know, the cookie cutter thing, like, you know. Yeah. People put their Christmas dinners up on Instagram and all this here, and I got this present, blah, 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 but they won't put like the row that they're having at 2 a.m. because they can't get a flipping relative out of the house. Do you know? That's reality, whereas, you know, sometimes our world doesn't allow for that. But yeah, that bit with Kate is just like, oh, okay. Anybody got anything to add? And nobody really gives her any massive comfort.
No, not particularly. It does stay in a very unhappy place.
Yeah, for like a minute, and then like something comes. I can't remember what happens after, but like I'm pretty sure some gremlin appears, and you know, like I say, has to be dealt with pretty quickly. But yeah, there is a darkness to it within. And in some ways, that sequence sticks out so much that it's like a black humor, you know. It's almost like, is it okay if I laugh at this? Because the awkwardness of it. You know,
I mean, you've got. I mean, her story that she tells is a classic or myth anyway. You know, it's one of the stories that would have gone around in the 80s quite a bit, where somebody knew somebody who that had happened to, and it's one of those warning kind of cautionary tales, and she's kind of playing it very straight. And I think because her and Billy are so kind of adorable as a couple as well, like I watch them and I think, oh, you guys are so cute and be together, and it's inevitable. But behind that kind of loveliness is this dark origin story that just and I think that Joe Dante's use of black humor throughout his work, I think, is impeccable. It's we're allowed to laugh at it, but also it disarms, and it's that point where I suppose narratively, you know, you've got that there's a levity is meant to be there in order to kind of like lift us so we can head into the darker and scarier moments again in a film, and this is kind of giving us more trauma to share. Yeah.
Do you think Billy's mom was like an assassin back in the day or something as well? Just
Billy's
just to put some fan fiction darkness into it, like.
I mean, she's very efficient with it, with those knives, and
that woman has seen some shit.
She must have done. There's no hesitation about what she does at all. So it seems that there's something else going on there. I mean, Dad's always away doing stuff. She's got to do something with her life, and again, I suppose it's that weird contrast in the suburbia. I mean, like, you know, the next door neighbor, the was it the Feldermans or something? I'm doubting myself. Futtermans.
Yeah.
You know, it's impeccably played. Mr. Futterman is Dick Miller, who, you know, I love from everything he's ever been in. He's just one of those figures. You know, Roger Corman used him a lot, then Joe Dante uses him a lot, and I think John Landis uses him quite a bit as well. He just pops up regularly. And his kind of, I mean, watching it just reminded me of a lot of attitudes in this country of late, with his very xenophobic, everything that's foreign is muck kind of approach to things.
Goddamn foreign cars, they always freeze up on you. You don't find American machinery doing that. Our stuff can take anything. See that plow? 15 years old, hasn't given me a day's trouble in 15 years. You know why? Kentucky Harvester. It ain't some foreign piece of crap you pick up these days. That's a Kentucky Harvester.
Which, you know, again, you shouldn't, in a way, you shouldn't enjoy. I think you're meant to kind of go, oh, that's terrible. But there is something about his determination that you still end up laughing at the bleakness of it.
Yeah, and you still like him.
Yeah, because he's likable.
Yeah, he's still a very likable character, despite those clearly, like, xenophobic comments, as you say. You know, and very kind of America first type attitude to everything. Like, if they remade it, if he appeared in like a Make America Great Again hat, you know, you wouldn't be surprised.
No, he'd totally be MAGA.
You know, but there's something as well about anytime you see like one of those small town America things, I think there's always, like, if you think of them down the years in whatever film, there's always like a wee darkness underneath, you know, because it looks, it's a beautiful setting, but there's always just something underneath, like an undercurrent to, like, you know, there's a guy in the town who's incredibly racist, but hey, we love him, he's lovable. You know, like, there's Gremlins running about, there's, you know,
well, you sort of,
his dad was found in a chimney, like, but sure, she's lovely and that's great.
I mean, there is something about that as well that allows it to contrast very well with the Gremlins, because it's sort of like a ramping up of awfulness, where, you know, you sit and you listen to his diatribes and see him in the pub kind of being ushered out because he's blocked, and he's manageable, you know, he's kind of, it's that notion of like, he's a bit racist but he's harmless, really, whereas then you have the Gremlins in the pub going through the same stuff, and they are a terrifying energy. Kate's sort of struggling to kind of just survive.
Yeah, there's even a bit where he goes, all right, well, I'll see you later, and they go, no, I don't think you should drive home, like, very kind of gently to him, and he's absolutely hammered, and he's about to jump into a plough to go home, but the Gremlins are like wrecking the gaff. They're completely, and by the way, whoever owns that bar, hire more staff, because Kate, bless her, she was doing her best there, and she was completely on her own.
That's a small town America for you, I suppose. I mean, I suppose, again, you know, he's complaining constantly about the stuff that's going wrong. I mean, it is that foreshadowing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of the foreshadowing goes on. Like, very early on, he's like, comes out of the house with the wife and goes, that fine piece of American machinery, that's never given me a day's trouble, and since I've had it from day one, or something along those lines, and you're like, yes. I don't know if that's, you know, because we've watched it that many times. You know, we laugh at that line every time we see it, but also there is a bit of foreshadowing that goes on from, you know, you even see Gizmo watches TV and then kind of turns into those characters a little bit later on, more specifically in the second film, but you know,
I mean, I suppose part of that is the foreshadowing, and then part of that is also, I suppose, is it a commentary on what we expose ourselves to and what we expose our children to, because Gizmo is essentially a child. He's Billy's child because he's communicative, he's verbal. It's not just like a little cute creature, you know, you've still got rules around him and you've got that responsibility. And as so many parents do, you know, in order to kind of entertain the child and get it just to kind of do his thing, they stick it in front of the box. Yeah. And so what Gizmo sees influences how he becomes. Fortunately,
I can't remember what that film is with the racing car in it. Do you know?
I am not actually sure what it is.
It's like, race the car, save the girl, which is essentially what he then does later on around that department store.
He's the child, and there's that responsibility, and there's this sort of commentary about what you expose your children to is what they're kind of going to end up influencing their lives and their decisions. Unfortunately, in this instance, it's generally positive stuff that Gizmo is exposed to. It does help him out ultimately, whereas it so easily couldn't have been. I mean, going through the stuff that's there. I mean, the scenes with the racing cars and stuff is adorable. There's also a little bit with the neighbors are watching. There's a brief glimpse of Jean Cocteau's Orphée, which is a film we've talked about before, and you know, he just disregards it as foreign muck. I don't know if that's how you feel after watching Jean Cocteau, but you know,
I'm much more positive. I'm much more positive.
But there's also It's a Wonderful Life gets referenced in this, which is something we did in our very, very first podcast on CinePunked. And it's a film that pops up a lot.
It just seems to be like that, again, small town America. There's a darkness underneath it all. that everything's going to be okay, because they show the bit at the end, you know, where George is running down the street, Merry Christmas, movie house, all that stuff, and then it doesn't quite reflect It's a Wonderful Life, but also I'm not the only one who sees the old evil Biddy in the town and thinks, oh, that's this town's Mr. Potter. You know, like that's almost like a very, you know, you could draw that analogy. You could look at the Bedford Falls to Kingston Falls.
Yep.
You know, you could see them as neighbouring towns, you know, that type of thing.
I think that's fair. I think that, you know, I suppose It's a Wonderful Life has become this shorthand, particularly in the United States, where it was, you know, it has a whole cult following, very different to here. Whilst it's regained a lot of its popularity here because of the way the copyright worked in the United States. That film, it ended up being screened endlessly. So a lot of Americans would associate it with Christmas in a very clear way. And I suppose those characters and those tropes are just so easily identifiable.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there is something kind of bleak about it. I mean, do you link George's desire for suicide and It's a Wonderful Life to Kate's accidental, you know, her father's accidental death, which could almost be seen as a suicide mission going down a Christmas tree? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they can. I think. Yeah, I think there is some kind of. It's almost like Joe Dante at the start of that film, because that clip from It's a Wonderful Life is fairly early on, and it's almost like he's going, here, it's going to be dark for a wee bit, but it will be okay, just like it was for George. All right, are we all on board? Good, let's carry on. And it cuts away, you know.
That's a very good point, because if you're going to pick a Christmas film, to dictate your tone, It's a Wonderful Life is not a happy film, really.
No, it's not a wonderful life until the very, very end. It's actually quite a very bleak life for large chunks of that film, as we've discussed down the years.
I think we'll kind of wrap this installment up in a second or two, but I think there's a couple other things you maybe want to talk about with this.
I have forgotten what I...
We're talking about powerhouses and universal law.
Yes. Now, if you were looking for a holy trinity of 80s American cinema, I don't think you can go too far wrong by having the involvement of 1, Steven Spielberg, 2, Joe Dante, and 3, Christopher Columbus. It was like, you know, the 80s version of Avengers Assemble or something. Like, to have them all in the mix. And I think that as being from that era, those are the familiar names. And in some ways, Spielberg's name comes up first. And this is not a very Spielberg film.
No.
But I wonder, maybe that was, you know, the way there's all these contractual things of my name first and my name second, and then I get the and on the end. But also, if you put Spielberg first, you think you're getting a certain type of film, and you're really not with this film.
That is a very good point. My father was complaining to me the other week about Deadpool and Wolverine.
Right.
Of all things. He said to me, bearing in mind the man had seen the first Deadpool, but he was complaining to me about the swearing in the film, which is ironic if you know my dad. But he was complaining about the swearing in it and thought, you know, his argument was that it was a Disney film and therefore he expected it to be different from that. And I guess there's that element of it as well with this, is when you see Steven Spielberg, particularly at this point, off the back of the likes of E.T., your assumption is probably that it's a bit more child friendly than the film that you actually get. This is not a film for kids. I don't think it's an adult film.
There's something special for your kids at Hardee's. With any sandwich, fries, and soft drink, get a Gremlins storybook and record for 99 cents or less plus tax. Collect all 5 of these read-along stories about Gizmo and his friends.
It's your Gremlin books, it's your records too, 'cause you love Gizmo and Gizmo loves you. Now it's
even if the comedy in it, even if the violence is sort of, well, no, it's not actually sort of Looney Tunes really, because it's quite brutal. It's not a film for children, and I think that's a recollection I have from when I did encounter it finally, because there's a conflict there, because you kind of feel like it should be, because it's got all these cute creatures, but it's not. It's something much more menacing. But Spielberg was the box office draw in the 80s. Wasn't that Dante wasn't a,
No, but if you put Spielberg's name on it, you have bums in seats automatically.
I think so, yeah.
I think when it comes up first and it pans up onto that lovely square of the town that has been used in so many things down the years, including Back to the Future. That's the same. It's the same set, and people go, "Oh, I know." There's almost like a, "Oh, I know this guy. I know this place." And then Joe Dante's name comes up.
Yeah.
And then you go, "Oh, okay. This isn't going to be like cute and cuddly here."
Yeah.
There's going to be there is cute and cuddly and there is humor, but there's an edge. There's going to be an edge to this that is different to what you think you're getting when you see that initial kind of slow pan up into the air of the town. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
Love it. I love it. The more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more I love it.
It is a wonderful kind of, I suppose that familiarity about it gives you a sort of safeness that you kind of enjoy, but there is a subversion too. So it's almost like the Gremlins are there to disrupt what is familiar to us as viewers and to rip away our kind of comfort zones. And I suppose for me, that kind of is really exemplified when we go to the cinema, where the Gremlins all go and hide in the cinema. And then in a wonderful sort of cross big companies move, Warner Brothers are screening Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
And the Gremlins are all thoroughly enjoying it as a group of very warm children, I suppose.
Yeah. But that's the power of cinema.
It brings you together.
That's genuinely what I thought in that moment. I was like, this is what cinema does. Cinema, the lights go down, something comes on, and all the chaos of the outside world of what's happening. Like I have said this so many times down the years, you go into the world that is projected in front of you, and everything else stops. Yeah. And you don't, like, if you've come in with a worry, you've come in with stress, you've come in with whatever. There's an hour and a half to 2 hours now, where maybe more, where that can all go away for a wee bit. So the Gremlins come in and they watch Snow White, and they don't have to create chaos until something makes them kick off and they kind of remember who they are, type of thing. But there's something in that moment where it's like, we're in a cinema. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is really nice.
On that note, I think we'll wrap up our conversation around Gremlins, because we've got another one not that far away. So you're a fan of Gremlins still?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like when you said let's do Gremlins, there wasn't even a moment where I was like, oh, come on. I'm like, nope, let's go. And then I say to you, let's do Gremlins too.
I go like, okay, let's do it. We don't often do sequels so quickly, but we'll do it this time. So look, Neil Sedgewick, thanks very much as ever for joining us.
Not a problem, always a pleasure.
And and so folks, if you're interested in this, just don't forget to hit the like, follow, subscribe buttons. Find us all online. CinePunked is on most places, including now the wonderful Blue Sky. I think we're going to chuck our Twitter because reasons, and Blue Sky is where we're going to be posting more of that kind of content from now on. But we'll catch you very, very soon, and another episode coming in your ears forthwith.